Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed snow day, so I felt I should dress up accordingly. I don't want you to feel that I'm missing out in some way by working at home. Fortunately for you, I'm not going to wear this all the way through, but I thought it would just entertain you for 2 seconds while we started. So I will derobe. And then I might talk to you more sensibly about GDPR. It's such a tedious subject that I have to come up with something more interesting to try and gauge your attention. Hopefully I have gauged your attention. So it is 2 o'clock, it's Thursday afternoon, and the snow is still coming down here. I guess some people have got it worse than we have, but it's pretty rubbish. So I'm hoping that all you guys who have been sort of stuck at home thinking, oh, I better do some work, what shall I do? I'll ring a few people. Maybe you could think about doing some GDPR preparation. Who knows? If you are watching, give us the little blue thumbs up at the bottom of the screen. You can type some comments as we go along. I'll try and deal with them. Don't look at my ridiculous hair. Now I've taken that hat off. I'll try and talk some sense. So we're going to talk today about privacy notices, privacy policies on your website. And I'm going to assume a little bit of a degree of knowledge, because I talked to you about GDPR in general terms about 2 weeks ago. Hi Beverly, nice to have you on the board. My instructions worked then, that's good. So I talked to you about GDPR generally a couple of weeks ago, and for those who missed it, it's on the page. Today I'm just going to talk specifically about privacy policies, because I think that's a point of some concern to quite a few people I've spoken to, and I've got a solution, hurrah! So privacy policies, now the ICO, who are the governing body who are going to be regulating us under GDPR, like to call them privacy notices, and they're sometimes called, they used to be sort of terms of use of the website. You'd have them on your website. That's generally where you'd have them viewable, and that's what we're really talking about this afternoon. So, as I say, I'm going to assume a little bit of knowledge about GDPR and what it requires, but one of the things that it requires is a compliant privacy policy. Now, why would that be? It's because that is how you are going to set out to people, essentially how you are going to use their personal data, where you're going to keep it, what purposes you're going to use it for, and what they can do if they want to know what you hold, or they want to raise a query about what you hold and whether you should continue to hold it. Okay, so the most usual place for this, the best place for it is obviously on your website, most people have it on a link through, probably from the front page, probably in the footer at the bottom of the page, but there's no rule about that. Just needs to be somewhere reasonably visible. There should be a link to it on all pages of the website, but not everybody has that. It's okay. But where you definitely need it is on the front page and on any contact us page where you may be collecting the data from people landing on your site. Okay, so what needs to be in a policy? And the next question is there a template? Okay, so let me deal with the second question first. If you go onto the ICO website, that is www.ico.org.uk, and don't panic, I'll put a link for this below if you can't catch all that in one go. There's some fantastic free materials on there. If you go into the section about organisations and for small organisations, you can see there a whole raft of information, and if you either search or look against privacy notices, it will give you a checklist of what needs to be in that policy. What it doesn't do is give you a template, and although some of the regs are not yet finalised, so there is still a little bit of room to be wriggled around in, to be sorted. I think even when they are sorted, it's quite unlikely that the ICO will provide you with a template policy. The reason for this is because they really want you to bespoke the policy to exactly what you're delivering, and it is they take the view it is not one size fits all. So I'll talk about a solution to templates in a little while. There are other templates available on some other legal websites, some template websites. Use them with care, but the checklist that's on the ICO is a really useful tool to check off any template that you may have to make sure that you are dealing with all the questions. So what the ICO asks you to do is say what data you're collecting: email addresses, mobile numbers. You might be collecting the age or demographic of your users or your visitors to your site. This is information you need to tell people what you are acquiring as they land on your site. So what are you collecting? That's the first thing. Second thing, where are you going to keep it? So you think, that's obvious, isn't it, on my computer? No, not that obvious. You may have it in cloud storage. Is the cloud storage in the EU or is it out of the EU? These things need to be disclosed. Are you sharing it with anyone else? So do you have sister companies or subsidiary businesses who are looking at that data and sharing information? Do you send it to a VA who isn't in the EU? That might need to be on your privacy policy. Where's it going and who's getting access to it? So where is that information being stored? Thirdly, when you might keep it. So if you are going to get their consent to have this data, you may also want to set out how long you're going to keep it for, because you are required to delete data that you no longer need and is no longer relevant. So there's a timeline to set out in the data, in the privacy policy rather. And finally, how are you going to use that data? What's the purpose for which you've been given the data, and what are you then going to use it for subsequently? Now, that sounds a bit obvious as well. Someone's put their email address on your website saying, please contact me about your services. I'm allowed to use it, surely. Well, of course you're allowed to use it to ring them and tell them about your legal services, your operational services, your cake baking services, your photography services, whatever it is that you do. But that does not anymore, post-May, entitle you to simply just stick them onto a database and start sending them newsletters and discounts and special offers and all sorts of other things. So you need to set out what's going on. I'm just going to pause a second and have a look at Beverly's query. So this sounds like how we would treat data for my current main employer, NHS, and in the past the police service. How long do we hold data for? Well, that's a good question. I would say, from a legal perspective, you should hold it for at least 6 years. And the reason I say 6 years is that that is the usual limitation period for someone bringing a claim against you for breach of contract or negligence. So if someone suggests that you've done something wrong, they've got 6 years from the date of the act to bring a claim. Now, that obviously is a very, very broad brush answer, but most people will say that they'll keep data and paperwork and files and so on for 6 years. That's a broad, rough indication. Some things will need longer for legal limitations, some will shorter, but 6 years is a good basis. You may want to keep a smaller time period because you've got an issue about storage, but it is a good idea to set something out in your policy about how long you will keep something for, and to have a regular cleanse, sift out, destroy of material that you no longer need and no longer want. Remember that there's also an obligation on you to ensure that data is up to date and still current, relevant, which is why I think when you go onto a lot of sites or you make calls to buy tickets and things like that, they will say to you, can we just check we've got the right details for you? That's all part of this data protection and data management that is already in existence under the current legislation, which is the Data Protection Act, and will be even more so under the new GDPR regulations come May. I hope that answers that question for you, Bev. So those are the items that need to be in the privacy policy, and it is not a one-size-fits-all. So if you're anything like me, you have a website that your web developer or your creative person the sparkly lovely lady that is Chrissy in my life did mine for me. And when it was created, she essentially begged, borrowed and stole something from somewhere else and popped it on. And it might have, and it definitely did have, information under the DPA. So things like, if you want to know what data we've got on you, you can send us a request, a formal request, and there's a fee to pay for this. That would be very typical in an old style policy. That process, that fee, that style of notice, gone under GDPR. So if you've got a policy that references a fee payable for extracting information from you, it needs to go. It is going to be out of date come May, and it really should go now. Where was I going with this? Lost my trail of thought. I know. So have a look at what you've got. The chances are that if your web developer did create your site and begged, borrowed and stole it from somewhere, that's what you now have. So hopefully it should be a relatively straightforward exercise to extract that one from the site and pop on a new one. So Heather, where do I get a policy? How do I have to write one from scratch? Well, you could, and there's plenty of material on the ICO website to allow you to do that. You may think, do you know what, I could really do with a bit of a hand, a bit of help. That's why I'm here. So I have got in my pack, in my GDPR pack, of which there's plenty of material on my Facebook page about this, there is a template privacy policy. It's a Word document. You cut and paste it out of the template. You cut and paste it into your website. You do have to do a little bit of work on it. So you've got to put your own name and your own email address and your own version of why you are holding the data. But that is a 5 to 10 minute exercise, not a 5 to 10 hour exercise to create something from a completely blank page. So if you would be interested in getting one of those templates, it comes as part of the pack that I'm doing, the GDPR starter pack. The price is £99, and for that you will get a guide, which is essentially an action list for what happens with GDPR, what your small business needs to do. You'll then get a series of 3 templates to help you deal with other aspects of GDPR, which I'm not dealing with in this video. But one of those templates is a privacy policy, which will be is GDPR compliant. And if the regs change between now and then, I will send you an updated version before May as part of your payment for the pack. So go away. Take a look at your website, have a look at your privacy policy in particular. You may find, if you do stats on these things, I bet nobody's looked at your privacy policy in about 4, 5, 6 years, or however long it is. And suddenly you could have all these people go, oh, I wonder what that says. Oh, perhaps I better read it. Nobody ever read privacy policy in the back in the day. Now everyone's going, all right, I better get it right. So if you would like one of those packs and you would like one of these draft policies, do get in touch, drop me an email. That would be fantastic. Right, I'm going to try and deal with some of these questions. I apologise that I'm going to squint a bit at the screen. This just shows what an old lady I am. Okay, so Bev, what about my own data for security on my website? I understand with newsletters I'm required to share a contact address, but concerned about security for self. Well, that is a good question. I mean, you have to have a contact email, and if you use a Gmail or a Yahoo, personal Gmail or Yahoo account, that's obviously a bit tricky. If you have your own website email domain, like mine is at stanfordgould.co.uk, you can have a contact at or info at or privacy at and do it that way so that they're not dropping things directly to your personal email. For me, my email address is out there. It's all over the place. It's on LinkedIn, it's on all sorts of social media, it's all over my website. I don't see that as being personal data anymore. It is as defined under the GDPR, but I don't worry about that being out there, because if people wanted to get hold of me, they could. I'm not sure how helpful that is, Bev, but you've got to have some sort of contact email address where people can raise queries about what data you hold and issues under your privacy policy. So if you don't have one already, you're going to need to get one if you don't want to use your personal one. Okay. blah, blah, blah. Alison, hi Heather. Following on from Beverly's question, if people have purchased photos from me, she's a photographer, I need to keep these for 6 years. However, for clients who did not purchase photographs, I'm not required to keep these. No, but what I would say is make sure that that's clear in your terms and conditions with your client. So that's less of a GDPR question. I have had quite a few photographers say to me, are photographs data? And the answer is, I'm not sure. And I've yet to find someone who can give me a definitive answer about that. Lots and lots of chat on weblines and web groups between photographers about whether they constitute data. In fact, what I might do is ask that question of my GDPR guru, and I may come back and do a session about that. But the short answer is what you need to do is make sure that your terms and conditions with your clients, so that's the service that you are delivering to them, anyone who comes to you and says, I'd like my photograph taken, please, and you say, of course I will, here are my terms. In those terms, you need to be clear about how long you're keeping photographs for, in whatever circumstance. So if they say, yes, I want to buy, I'm going to keep them for this long. If they say, just coming for the shoot, don't want to keep any of them, you need to set out in your terms how long you're going to keep this stuff for. I hope that's helpful. Good actions for me and review before launch. That's absolutely right. Hello, children and brothers who are also watching me. It's very nice of you. Thursday afternoon is a good time to catch one's family on Facebook Live and one's clients. So this is a plus. It's a plus. So I will put on the bottom of this live a link to the ICO website because it's got some great materials free to use and to cobble and to pinch and to... That's what they want you to do. Get on there and have a look at it. There is some work you have to do. Sorry guys, that's just the way it goes. And secondly, I will add a link to my pack. If you're interested in the pack, please just drop me an email as per the information which will be on the link below, and I will happily send you through the information, and hopefully that will solve at least one of your GDPR headaches. If you're interested in looking at anything else about GDPR, there are other videos on the site, and we've got quite a bit of material on the website too. So hopefully, if you can't find the answer in amongst all of those things and all of those resources, just ping me an email and I will see if I can answer it. And for Alison's benefit, I will make sure that I know the answer to the question, is a photograph data for GDPR purposes, this time next week. Okay, see you soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.